Welcome to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending June 24th. We've got a big show tonight. In studio tonight with us, we've got a special guest. Carmine Bianco is joining us. He is going to discuss World Cup soccer, and he is off to a red-hot start. We'll find out more about that. We've got another segment we added last week, and we're back again, Handicapper's Corner, where we will be talking about either a handicapping theory or a betting strategy to help you become a more profitable sports investor. Ralph Michaels is in studio with me, as always, and we've got 3 big baseball games we'll preview for the weekend. And what you wait for at the end of the show, 3 best bets. You'll have 2 baseball plays and a soccer best bet from Carmine. We've got Mark Seidel behind the controls. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. Let's get this party started. Well, let's welcome in tonight's guest. He is WagerTalk's own Carmine Bianco, about to become 50 next week. We were doing a little celebrating on the strip last night, Carmine. Welcome to the show, and you can follow Carmine at Carmine Bianco, WT, on Twitter. And Carmine, good to have you here in World Cup soccer, going crazy right now in the sports books. And I know you've been down at the sports book at 5 a.m. every morning while you're here on this trip. Most people are ending their night at 5 a.m. in Vegas, Carmine. They're not starting it at 5 a.m., but you're getting those big soccer games. And I heard you almost needed security to get you out of Planet Hollywood today.
Yeah, well, I've been here since Sunday, and it hasn't really changed my schedule. I'm sort of on the same time. Usually there's that jet lag, and you have to get used to things. But the World Cup, obviously being in Russia and the way the times are set, it's worked out pretty good for like an East Coast guy who's on the West Coast. So I'm up at 4:30. I'm down at the sports book, and it's great that they're open and taking action. But I've literally done the same thing each and every day. I'm down there at 4:30 in the morning. I watch the first 2 games, then head to the room, shower, change, grab a quick bite, and then I'm down for the last game, which is at 11 o'clock. But yeah, today was a little crazy. I was the only one at Planet Hollywood who was a Croatia fan. It was all Argentinian fans and, South Americans. The way they are, they're pretty passionate about their team. And after that first goal by Croatia, I stood up and I was fist pumping. And it wasn't until the second goal where I started yelling the words "Golazo," right? And literally stretching it out for about 30 seconds. And they didn't take too well to it. So I had a few guys yelling at me, and luckily a friend of mine arrived and watched the rest of the game and sort of provided a little bit of security for me. But they weren't happy with that 3-0 final. I was, because as we gave out on our video last month, Croatia to win the group at plus 230. I just thought they were the best team in that group of death, and they showed it today. They're 6 points from 2 games, and depending on the result of the game tomorrow with Iceland and Nigeria, they could have the group locked up even before that final game.
Carmen, we had Jason Simbal on the Las Vegas Sports Network before, and he said they had 6 figures on that game today. So that's a pretty good handle for Argentina and Croatia. The other 2 games played earlier today was Denmark and Australia 1-1, and France 1-0 in Purdue. Was the Argentina upset of Iceland, the tie, the biggest upset you've seen? Was it Mexico over Germany? Or give us the biggest upset so far in the World Cup.
Well, I definitely think Mexico knocking off Germany, the defending champions, is by far probably the upset of the tournament. Even though Mexico is a very good team and was a favorite to get out of that group, maybe not win the group, but get out of the group. But, Iceland tying Argentina definitely sort of set the tone for that group. The thing with Argentina is, and I think a reason why you get a lot of money at Argentina at the book in a game like this against Croatia is everything you see in the media is Lionel Messi. Everything you see in the media is Cristiano Ronaldo. They're name players. They're the 2 best players in football right now. So I think everyone figured after that opening 1-1 draw that they would come out today and they would be much better, that they would win the game, because they're favored to win the group. But we know favorites don't win. They don't always win. And, if you look at a team like Croatia and you say, name me 3 players. Well, I could, but a player in a sports book who just reads or watches ESPN or Fox News and reads about previews of the game, all they're seeing from the announcers are, it's Messi time. It's Lionel Messi time. It's time for him to carry this team. Well, one player cannot carry a team in the World Cup against a good squad like Croatia. You know what I mean? I know the players. I'm familiar with them. Their whole midfield plays in the Spanish league, in La Liga. So they're familiar with, and some of them play on Barcelona. So they're familiar with Lionel Messi. They know how to shut him down, and they did.
We take soccer for granted here in the U.S., and the World Cup is such an event. Just to put some perspective on it, Iceland, which tied Argentina 1-1 in their first game, Iceland's about the size of Santa Ana, California, 335,000. During that game, 99.6% of the TVs in Iceland were on for that Iceland-Argentina game. Again, you want to talk about encompassing a nation. That's what the World Cup does to those teams.
No question. It surprises us how much here in the States, even with the United States not being in the World Cup this year, how much action you see people in the sports books. On the way driving to the studio, Carmine, you were telling me about, Argentina. They got their backs up against the wall now, and they need help, to stay alive. That game that's coming up, unique situation with the line. Explain the two teams and what the line is, and to the average bettor, how they might think, well, I can make money no matter what I do.
Yeah, obviously they've backed themselves into a corner, first of all, Argentina, but despite losing today, they aren't eliminated. The result of tomorrow's game, regardless of the result of tomorrow's game, it'll go into the final match day 3. So a couple different scenarios. If Nigeria wins tomorrow, Argentina plays Nigeria on match day 3, beat them, they go to 4 points. Now, at 4 points, they're sitting in second, and obviously the only way they're knocked out is if Iceland knock off Croatia in the final match day, and then it comes down to sort of goal differential. But losing 3-0 today was a bad thing, because obviously goal differential is one of those. If that game tomorrow ends in a draw, then it's the same scenario. Argentina wins, they'll go to 4 points, and Iceland would have to again beat Croatia to knock Argentina out and take that third spot, or take that second spot. But as far as tomorrow, the line on both sides, which I checked before we left, is plus 180 for Nigeria to win, plus 180 for Iceland to win, but this is on the 3-way line, and the draw is plus 220. So it's obviously it's plus money. Now, obviously you can't bet all three options and make any money. But if you're certain of a side, like let's say you say to yourselves, I like Iceland, there is no way that they're going to lose. At worst, they can get, they would draw. Then you can take Iceland plus 180. You can take the draw plus 220. I would never do that, because it's sort of like with any other sport, it's sort of like that Polish middle where you think you can make money if the result goes in your favor, but if Nigeria wins, you lose both bets. So I wouldn't actually do that. The 2-way line in that game is a pick'em with literally minimal juice, minus 110 on both sides, a pick'em. So if the game ends in a draw, it's a push. But if you like a side and you don't think they're going to lose, then that's the way to go, as opposed to the 3-way line. The 3-way line is if you like your side and you think they're going to win, you take them. You're going to make money on that game. The
big thing for our listeners that maybe don't bet soccer, and that's the one confusing part, is the 3-way line. There are 3 separate bets there. You pick the 2 sides, which one you think is going to win. But if that game ends in a tie, you don't push those bets. You've lost that bet. There is a third bet there where you're actually betting for the tie. So that's why you walk into the sports book and you look up at a board and you see 3 options and all of them got a plus in front of it. You think, wow,
Yeah.
The guy that doesn't understand it might think, oh, this is good. I'm going to make some money here, but not the case. looking ahead, Carmine, to what we've got going in the next couple of days here, what games are you excited about to watch as maybe not necessarily as a bettor, but as a fan, it's going to be a big game for you? And I know that you do have a big game. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but I'm talking as Carmine, the soccer fan.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 actually this weekend. We'll start with there's Germany. Germany plays Sweden. It's a big game. Germany literally missing the knockout stages would be a bracket buster for most people who play pools, much like Virginia Tech
or Virginia in the NCAA. Yeah,
number 1 seed going down to I can't even remember that team's name, but that from Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah, they beat them. Yes,
but it's similar to that. But they play Sweden. This is sort of a post Zlatan. A Swedish team, Ibrahimovic, but they have a good young team. They play a little more sort of foot forward soccer as opposed to that boring style. And we've seen a lot of that style from the South African teams and Asian teams who literally will just defend 9-10 guys in the box. A perfect example is yesterday's Iran-Spain game. Spain had probably 75% possession, and the game was played all in the final third of Iran's end. But they just literally played, defended to get a point. It's for anyone watching soccer for the first time. It's terrible soccer to watch because it's just not. The game today was fantastic. This is the type of game a new fan wants to watch, unless of course they had Argentina money. But the Croatia-Argentina game was back and forth, and both teams tried to win. But definitely the Germany game. I do think they'll beat Sweden, as I mentioned previously. I did bet them earlier when the line came out, and it's been trending upwards. It's minus 260 now. But I would probably recommend at this point the goal line, you can get them at -1. I would never recommend to anyone taking a minus 260 line. It's a bankroll killer. A couple other games for our good friend JD in Detroit is Poland, Colombia. Colombia lost to Japan, which is an extreme upset, but it was like a red card and a penalty 3 minutes in and sort of set them on their way to defeat. But they were picked as group winners, a slight favorite. And Poland dropped a game to Senegal, but I don't think that was as unexpected as they picked Senegal to finish second in that group. They have a very good team, and they're probably the best team out of Africa in this World Cup. So it's literally a must-win for both sides. I don't think a draw helps either, but I do think, sorry, Johnny, but I do think Colombia is going to come out on top in that game. A couple final games, which are on Sunday, are England over Panama. This England team isn't a typical England team of the past, score a goal and then sit back. They actually do attack with Kane, Dele Alli, Rashford, Sterling. They actually look a lot more exciting. They're playing Panama. Panama doesn't deserve to be in this World Cup. We faded them with Belgium as our 5% play, and they came through for us. And I think England is -2 plus 115 last I saw. And if you get England at 1.5, definitely take it. But there's no problem with taking them at 2. I think at the very least you get a 2-goal win and a push. And the final game is seeing Belgium again. Belgium plays on the weekend. This time they're playing Tunisia. I just love the way this team plays. I have futures on them to win them in France, and at 11-1, I would love for them to win on the weekend and not lock up first, because they'll play England on match day 3, which will be a great game to watch, but literally lock up their spot into the next round.
After seeing the first round games, is there any team that you think might be overvalued or somebody undervalued from what you've seen so far in the betting market?
Overvalued right now is, is likely Uruguay. Overvalued into the next knockout stages, because they'll make it, is obviously Russia. Russia made it in only because of they're the host nation. Uruguay and Russia do play on match day 3, and that'll decide who wins that Group A. Other teams, I hate to say, I don't want to make it look like I hate Portugal, that I'm not a Portugal fan, because I love the way Ronaldo plays. He was a star early on in his career, but he adapted his game as he got older. So, other than being attacking forward, he plays a little farther back and develops with the play. But, Portugal still has an aging back line. You have Alves, who's 36, and Pepe, who's 35, and they're the center backs for the team. I just think Spain exposed that defense. Unfortunately, an own goal or a mistake by De Gea, Spain's goalie, and then of course a Ronaldo penalty kick before that. Fantastic.
Incredible kick, yeah.
The penalty kick is a penalty kick, but it was the free kick that tied the game. That's just fantastic. Yeah. That is just it's probably the goal of the World Cup so far. But I just don't see how Portugal can make it that far, sort of moving forward. Overvalued teams are probably Mexico as well. They were horrible in the lead up to the World Cup. They just did not look good in any of their friendlies, but they played a fantastic tactical game against Germany. But I think once they get into the knockout stages, I don't see them going that far.
All right, and coming up later in the show, you're going to be giving us a free best bet for our listeners. But you do have a big play going this coming up tomorrow, Friday. We're taping on Thursday night, so you have a 5% play going. You hit your first one. You're off to a great start with the World Cup. I'm going to tell our listeners, head over to WagerTalk. Check this out. If you want to get Carmine's play, you can get the 5% by itself. But if you want an even better deal, you've got the World Cup package up. You can get the entire World Cup for $199. But we're going to give you a coupon, WC50. WC50 will get you $50 off that package. And not only do you get the World Cup, but you get some bonus plays in there while the World Cup's going on. Tell our listeners about that real quick.
Yeah, no, I just, because there's, 3 games a day in World Cup action, you can't put out 3 games a day just for the sake of giving guys plays. You want to pick and choose, sort of cherry pick the games, ones that you think will win. But, I also understand that, guys sort of love their action. And it's my MLS client plays. So, during the World Cup, they did take a 2 to 3 week break during the World Cup or a couple of weeks, but they resume on the 23rd this weekend. And there's a full slate of MLS games. So you'll get every single MLS client play that I put out. So I won't actually have MLS packages out, but I do load the plays, and if you do pick up the World Cup package, and of course use that promo code to get 50 off, you'll get every single MLS play that I put out
until the conclusion of the World Cup.
Until the conclusion, and there is, it looks like on Sunday. I'm just waiting for lineup reports, but there'll likely be a big play in MLS this weekend as well too. So
great stuff, Carmine. Appreciate you coming in studio today and joining us and enlightening us on the World Cup. You're going to hang around and be back for the best bets section, where you've got a nice one for us. We'll get that later in the show. We're going to take a quick break, folks. When we come back, it's going to be Handicapper's Corner. We're going to tell you about misleading numbers and what to do with them and not to make the mistakes to overreact. That's going to be up next when we return here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It's time for our new segment, Handicapper's Corner. Now that Delaware and New Jersey are on board taking sports bets, and there'll be more states following, we want to help you guys. We understand there's going to be a lot of guys that are new to sports betting, or, hey, you're veterans, but you're going to be betting more now because you've got more access, and we want to make you a better bettor, and we're going to do it here in the Handicapper's Corner. Ralph, I'm going to come to you. At this time of the year, everybody's getting ready for the football season. This is what, the dog days of summer. It's the quiet time, so to speak. The NBA playoffs are done. The baseball, everything's, heading to the All-Star break. We'll have, those few days off and everything. But football's just around the corner, and you got to start doing your homework. Tell us and our listeners some things to look at and some things to not overreact to or maybe put too much of an emphasis on or not enough.
Well, I would say that when you're looking at college football teams and you're taking one team that just finished and you're looking at how they're going to translate into the following year, 99% of the people are going to base those numbers on returning starters. And you should. I mean, that's the most important part. You have 22 players starting each game, and when you have a higher percentage of starters coming back, you're gonna hope that team does better. But there's a lot of deceiving numbers inside of that realm. The other number people look at are lettermen, and letterman is such a vague term because there's no rule to give a letter out. There are some teams. An example, BYU, there are some head coaches, example, Jim Harbaugh, that if you put on a jock strap and spit on the field, you're going to get a letter. Both of those teams gave out over 90 letters last year. Then you look at a team like Western Michigan. Western Michigan gave out 45 letters. So if you look at a Western Michigan team and you say they're only returning 29 lettermen, and then you look at Michigan and you say they're returning 63 lettermen, you can't use those numbers to compare. If you're going to use lettermen, you have to use a percentage of returning lettermen and not just the number of lettermen. So while your starters are set and you have 22 per team, lettermen is an entirely different scenario. Now, let me also give you an example of teams that are returning a lot of lettermen, but while letterman numbers can be deceiving, Wyoming, Kansas, and South Carolina are your top three teams this year in returning lettermen. All three of those return over 80% of their lettermen back. Wyoming number 1, Kansas number 2, South Carolina number 3. If we look at the bottom echelon, the last three teams of the 129 college football teams, Colorado State, Texas, and East Carolina, all return between 54 and 56 lettermen. So there's the top and the bottom. Now, what if I told you, if I take a team from the top and a team from the bottom, I'm going to take South Carolina, which is number 3, I'm going to take Texas, which is number 129, and both return exactly 14 starters. So if you're going to say, I'm going to look at starters, you're looking at the number 3 team in letterman, the number 129 team in letterman. Two completely different facets. So when you're taking letterman and starters, make sure you use a combination of both to really be able to judge those. I can't say enough that, when you look at starters, there are teams that return. Teams return multiple people that started at positions. They call them starters. Some people call starters. If they return 4 or more games, they call them starters. But look at the combination of experience. And these are the top 4 and the bottom 4 teams. And when I combine my experience looking at starters, looking at stats, and looking at returnmen, the top 4 teams this year, Kansas, Georgia Southern, Wisconsin, and Florida. The bottom 4, Hawaii, UTSA, LSU, and Colorado State. And my last note will be this. Kansas returns 19 starters this year. Well, when you have a team that's horrible, is the worst Power 5 team, and 19 kids that weren't very good are back for another year, that doesn't necessarily dictate you're going to be a good team. They may be better than last year's Kansas team, but again, make sure those teams are good enough to reach the next level of competition.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about an interesting angle, and we're going to have to get Brian in on the show here in one of the coming weeks. One of the things that he started doing last year, and it really, when somebody looks at something, it may be you look at it and then you look at it through your eyes and you see something different. Brian started going with these college football games and, the NFL games and stuff, looking at first half stats. Instead of looking at game stats, look at first half stats. And it makes sense because you're going to get truer numbers in the first half. Because let's face it, what happens? You play that first half, one team's, winning, the other team's losing, maybe it's tied. But if one team's winning, do they adjust their game plan in the second half? Do they protecting the lead? If they have a big lead, obviously maybe they're playing softer defense, and the other, and then so the stats for the full game become maybe closer to what they really were when the team dominated the first half and put the game away in the first half. So, I like that because a lot of times you can come down and I know everybody looks at box scores, but that's something that, you see a final score and you see a box score and then you look at those stats and say, wow, this team had, an extra 150 yards passing in the game. It was a situation where, they lost by 2 touchdowns, but the stats say it should have been closer. No, maybe sometimes it really wasn't. If you look when those yards were put together, was that garbage time yards that made it look better than it was. So looking at the first half stats and then looking at the full game stats, that'll give you a better indication on whether a team really outperformed but was unlucky in that game.
Especially, Marco, in September, I find that even more valuable because you have Power 5 teams that are playing non-Group of 5 teams, non-Power 5 teams, and those teams that have a quality opponent on deck will always play their starters that first half. They're not going to pull starters during the first half, but if they get that lead and they're comfortable with that lead, they start to work in other concepts. They start to work in their second and third string. Number one, giving their starters rest for next week. Number two, preparing depth for later on in the year when they do need that.
Yeah, and in those first weeks, honestly, Ralph, that's why I think the sweet spot of the college football season is from the time you get October to that first week in November. I think that 5 or 6 week stretch there is the truest form of college football because, one, you don't have those games against the Sisters of the Poor in September that inflate the stats. If you look at stats from the first 3 weeks and use them as you would use them later in the season, you're doing yourself a big disservice because they are going to be way out of whack for both teams. The team that got pounded, that took a payday, we're going to go to Alabama and get the snot beat out of us for $1 million, paycheck for the school. That team's not as bad as they looked in that game. In Alabama, obviously, they're going to run up impressive numbers and, you're going to see, ridiculous passing percentages and things. You can't just look at that. But from October to that first week of your in-conference play, teams are still alive for conference because they haven't, lost enough games to be out of the running yet or still have that magical we're live for the 6 wins to be bowl eligible. But a lot of times then when you get to those last couple games in the month of November, it comes back to like the beginning of September. You got to worry about teams that have tossed the towel, and that's a whole nother handicap, and we'll talk about those kind of things later. And rivalry games is a different handicap as well. So for the purest form, look at those, first half stats. You're going to get starters versus starters with the original game plan, and then you're really seeing the true value of those teams.
Carrying that thought on even further, Marco, when I look at ratings, and every week I do a sheet at WagerTalk, and I don't list offenses, I don't list defenses, but I list the yards per game and the points per game difference and the strength of the schedule the opponent played. Let's face it, anyone could put up 500 yards against some FCS teams, but by not knowing who they played, that's very important. So, my one sheet that I do, and something I want people to be careful of, is looking at NCAA ratings for offense and defense. They are some of the most misleading numbers out there. You get out of September, and a team like ULM last year played a weak non-conference schedule, and they actually ended up number 21 on offense. So if I'm looking at NCAA numbers and we get to conference play mid-October and I've got a top 20 offensive team, I'm going to think, wow, that team is very good and I can play on them. But I'll tell you what, ULM was number 21 on offense. They finished the season number 21. Congrats to them. But their defense was number 129, and if you look at the yards per game diff, you just take their offense minus their defense, divided by the yards per game they played, they were actually number 114 at minus 94.2 yards per game. So when you're looking at a 21 offense, you think, wow, that's a team I could play on, when in reality, they were a bottom 15 team when you add in both their offense and defense. To give you an idea, it's no surprise who the best teams in football were last year in yards per game diff. Ohio State had a 7 offense, 9 defense. They were number 1 in the NCAA, plus 205 yards per game. Oklahoma, a number 1 offense, but a number 67 defense. That number 1 offense was so good that they were still number 2 at plus 185 yards per game. Alabama, with the number 29 offense and number 1 defense, was number 3 at plus 184. UTEP and San Jose on the bottom. UTEP was minus 216 yards per game. When you're playing in a conference like CUSA, you're not playing a very tough non-conference schedule, and you're getting outgained by 216 yards per game. That is ugly. San Jose State was second last. They were minus 181.
And those kind of stats, Ralph, also, with teams that have such a big difference, and it's coming from their defense being so poor, that's going to help you with totals as well. When you're looking at these teams, when you get one of these poor defenses lined up against, a good offense, they're going to go up and down the field. And, we're going to, when we're going to have a whole section on totals on Handicappers Corner, because there's also things, like in basketball, there's pace of the game. Well, college football, you want to look at the number of plays per game that a team, averages, per game, because it's going to show you the pace that they play at.
Marco did not even know this was going to be my final part of the segment. But, plays per game is one thing you look at. And last year, the top 3, you probably wouldn't guess the top 3 as far as pace per play. You look at some teams, they run their fast-paced offense, and those are the teams you see on TV. Wake Forest was the number 1 team last year, running 82 plays per game. Memphis 81, San Jose 80. The bottom 3, no surprise, Army at 55.9, UTEP 57.8, and Mississippi State 58.5. And the reason I bring this up as far as misleading numbers that we're talking about now is if you look at a Mississippi State defense and you say, they allowed 300 yards per game, they're an elite defense. Well, that's not true. Their offense was so slow-paced. Their defense was only on the field 59 plays per game. That means they allowed more yards per play than a lot of people. And let me give you the difference here. Last year, the median play in college football was 5.6 yards per play. So that is your average team. If I say Wake Forest and Mississippi State both allowed 5.6 yards per play, in my mind, I would have to say those defenses are equal. If you translate 5.6 yards per play out for the number of plays the defense is out on the field, Wake Forest would give up 427 yards. Mississippi State would give up 280 yards. There's no way you would compare those two teams and say they're the same, but they were very much the same when they were on the field. So again, just a bunch of generic numbers here to look at, but those are things to be thinking out when you're looking at stats, how misleading those stats can be. Make sure you're analyzing them the right way.
Yeah, and just to throw a perfect example from the NFL, Chip Kelly, when he was running the offense, was the head coach of the Eagles. Their defense, the Eagles' defense was bad because the defense was on the field so much because the offense was so.
It was bad yards per game.
Bad yards per game, but they were on a long time. Soon as he's gone and they run a traditional offense, look at the numbers on the Philadelphia defense, what a turnaround they had. And, of course, 2 years there they are in the Super Bowl and win it. So it's a lot of stuff inside the numbers, and we're going to be doing a lot of that this season on videos, podcasts, everything. And if you guys have, again, we said it last week, if you have something you want us to talk about in this segment, tweet at us. Hit us up on Twitter. Send us an email. We'll discuss it and definitely cover it here because this is all about you guys, and we want to make you guys more informed and become a better so you have a better chance of making money betting sports. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got 3 games for this weekend baseball action that we're going to cover, and best bets yet to follow. We'll be back in a moment here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. Time to check out the weekend baseball action. We've got a good one to kick it off Friday night. We've got St. Louis at Milwaukee. Ralph, we've got a pitching matchup of Flaherty and Herrera. This is 2 teams that are battling in the National League Central. We know St. Louis is going to be there every year. The Cubs have been the team that's dominated the last couple. But Milwaukee is the new team knocking on the door trying to get in here, and they do it with pitching, Ralph, because this team, they struggle to score runs.
Well, this is really, it's the first of Milwaukee's put up or shut up. They got off to that 36-21 start. They're 7-9 the last 21 days, and those games were 7 of them against Philly, a couple against the Cubs, a couple against the Indians. And I think this is, now they have the home stretch where they need to prove that they belong, that they're going to be in here in August in this division. And I look at it, and, for St. Louis, you have the 22-year-old Jack Flaherty pitching. 5 starts last year, 6.33 ERA as a 21-year-old rookie. This year, 9 starts, a 2.66 ERA, and in nine of his 12 starts, he's allowed 1 earned run or less. In his 3, in quotation, bad starts, he's allowed 3, 3, and 4 runs. Now, can Junior Guerra for Milwaukee match him? Guerra is a splitter-type pitcher, 33 years old. Last year, a 5.72 ERA. So we're talking combined last year, these 2 pitchers had an ERA of 12. That's pretty ugly. This year, though, 3-5 with a 2.89 ERA, and boy, has he had hard luck. Started off 4 great starts, 2 mediocre starts, and in his last 7 starts, he's allowed 2 earned runs or less, 5 of those, and has not gotten a decision. And in his bad games, he's allowed 3 earned runs twice and lost both of those. It's a situation where I like Milwaukee at home. I think whoever gets the early lead is going to be the benefactor here, and the team that scores first, I believe, wins this game.
Yeah, you look at it, and this is a situation, a 3-5 record, Ralph, with the numbers he's put up this season. It's got to be frustrating for a young pitcher that's pitching as well as he is and not being able to get the W's there. And you go back to Flaherty for a second. You talked about all of his numbers and how dominant he's been. His strikeout to walk ratio, 55-14. That's fabulous for a young pitcher. But I agree with you. I'm looking at Milwaukee in this game. I think they're going to get the job done. Got to get them some runs. This is a team that struggles to score runs. Last 9 games, Ralph, they've scored 3 runs or less in 6 of the 9, and they got to rely on that good pitching. The bullpen, one of the best in baseball. Generally, if you get it to the 7th, 8th inning with a lead, you're going to be good with Milwaukee. At night, 29-15 in night games this year, Ralph. And when Milwaukee is a home favorite of 150 or less this season, they're 20-9. I'm going to look at Milwaukee. I think you might even want to consider the under, the way these 2 pitchers are pitching and the way these 2 teams are hitting.
Marco, moving to Saturday, and Baltimore has been ugly. 30 games under. They're 21-51 on the year. Atlanta, another team like Milwaukee that people weren't expecting to be there. They find themselves as the leaders. We're moving to late June, and we know that's the time where some of these teams, it's either put up or shut up that you're going to be a contender or you just got off to a great start. Dylan Bundy for Baltimore is the only time you're ever probably going to want to back the Orioles. Do you think about doing that against Julio Teheran in this game?
Well, you look at this one in Teheran. He just came off the 10-day DL. It was a short stint. He came back, and he pitched fantastic in that first start back. He recorded 11 strikeouts and 6 innings of no-hit ball when he came back off the DL against the Padres on Sunday. He exited after his right hamstring cramped up a little bit on him, but he did have a velocity increase, so that 10 days off, whatever was ailing him did help him because he had 91-mile-an-hour fastball. Looking at it, though, I look at Dylan Bundy, and this is a guy, you want to talk about another hard-luck pitcher. He has pitched well. He's allowed 3 runs or less in 6 of his last 8 starts. The 2 starts that he didn't allow 4 runs, Ralph, or he didn't allow 3, he allowed 4 in both of those. What I also like in this one, though, is Bundy, when he pitches in daylight games, and I know a lot of people just look at, ERAs and they don't break them down and so forth. And some of these guys, they have, we talk about home and road dichotomies all the time. Well, some pitchers have daylight and nighttime dichotomies. In Dylan Bundy, his ERA for this season, 7-day games, he's got a 4-1 record and an ERA of 1.70 in those daylight games. So in his whip, under 1, 0.92. That's fantastic. I got to go ahead and give a shot looking here in this one to Baltimore. And if you don't trust Baltimore to win the game, maybe make the safer bet, take the bullpens out of it, and say, Bundy's going to outduel Teheran and look at Baltimore first 5 innings.
Baltimore 10-28 on the road. So, again, when Bundy's pitching, about the only time you ever think about backing him on the road, Dylan Bundy in the month of June had 2 great starts where he gave up no earned runs, didn't get a win. The last game out, he allowed 4 runs in 6 innings, one of the worst outings he had. And what do you know? Baltimore scores a 10 spot, and he actually wins that game. So sometimes, you don't always have those hard luck losses. There are times you win and do that. You talked about day and night with Bundy. Home and road, the same. At home, he's got a 4.18 ERA. On the road, a 3.32 ERA. And one concern for me for Teheran is he had the 13 days off. He came back from the DL. Yes, he pitched 6 innings. Yes, he had 11 Ks. His previous high was 9. But he did leave that game with a hamstring injury. And if you have a hamstring injury once and you're pitching 5 days later, that very, very aptly can happen again.
Yes, and we know that if you're a pitcher, you got to have your legs because that's where all of the strength comes from there. Hey, moving to Sunday, we got the Dodgers. They're going to have Rich Hill on the mound. He came back from the DL as well after missing a month. He threw 6 scoreless innings in his return and allowed he struck out 6 and allowed just 3 hits against the Cubs. He's going to be facing the Mets and Vargas, and we've been talking about a lot of hard luck pitchers. Well, there's no hard luck in Jason Vargas. This guy has just been getting pounded on a regular basis. He was a big signee for the Mets this year. They gave him a lot of money, nice contract, and it is not paid out for the Mets. And this is a situation where his days could be numbered as a starter. Syndergaard, is on the DL right now. He comes back. I think he's out of the rotation.
Vargas is 35 years old. I think he's trying to hold on. And, he's watching Bartolo Colon and thinks he's going to get a rebirth at 42. So maybe he's just trying to last till then. But you look at Rich Hill and, we make fun of pitchers sometimes that go on the DL. Well, Rich Hill has spent an incredible amount on the DL the last 3 years. And the reasons are broken fingernails and blisters. That actually is why he was on the DL the last time, was a broken fingernail, but it does affect pitchers the way they throw their ball. Rich Hill has to prove to me that he's going to be better. His first 6 starts this year, a 6.20 ERA, a 1.74 whip. Yes, he came off the DL. Yes, he had 6 innings pitched, shutout ball, 3 hits, but that was in just 1 game. You look on the other side with Vargas. Vargas at home has a 4.91 ERA, and you think that's pretty bad? Just to give you an example, Vargas on the road, 10.96 ERA. So thank God he's pitching at home this week. But, I will give the Mets this. The Mets are 22-30 against righties. Against lefties this year, they're 9-10, and they've been a sizable dog in those games. So you got a team that's one game under 500 against lefties and has kept in the game. We'll see if they could do so this week.
I just can't trust Vargas. I know, sometimes when these pitchers get their backs to the wall, they find that good start. But Rich Hill, as you said, with the blisters and the broken fingernails, the blisters have been the bigger concern over the most of the time is what he's had the problems with. And he came off that last start, zero problems, no blister issue at all. It wasn't, so the fact that he was as sharp as he was and had no issues with the blister, I got to think that it's going to continue in this one until it develops. But that's the problem. You never know when he's going to develop a blister on his throwing hand.
It hasn't been this year yet, though. Yeah. He was on with a broken nail, so no blisters. He's been blister-free. Blister-free,
and let's hope that he continues it. I lean to the Dodgers. They're just playing too well right now, and at the beginning of the season, the bullpen wasn't doing well. Jansen was not his usual self. He's back to the Jansen that we know and closing the game. So if Hill can get us 6 good innings, we get that middle relief there from the Dodgers and turn it over, in the 9th inning. For me, it's Dodgers or you got to pass the game.
And the Dodgers do go into New York having lost 3 or 4 games. So if you've gone 1-3 in a stretch and you're facing the Mets, you better come out with a series win, if not a sweep.
There you go. All right, guys. That's going to take care of the preview for the weekend. So what's that mean? Well, only thing left is the best bets. You're going to get one from Ralph. Ralph's been hot the last couple of weeks with the best bets. We've been splitting out on the best bets. So that means if Ralph's has been winning and we're splitting out, I guess that means I lost the last 2 weeks with the best bets, Ralph. So I got to get back in the winners column this week. And we got Carmine's going to be coming back in here for the last segment with a soccer best bet for us. So that is up next when we return here on the WagerTalk Podcast. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It's best bet time. We've got 3 of them, but before we get to those best bets, got a special deal for you guys this week. You listen to the podcast, you deserve to be rewarded listening to us, guys. So we are going to give you a special coupon. If you want to buy a 7-day package at WagerTalk, pick your favorite capper. 7-day, all access. You get all of their plays for that 7-day period. That's all plays, all sports. Normally $99, but if you use coupon code podcast30, that's podcast and the number 30, you will get $30 off a 7-day package, giving you 7 complete days for just $69. Great deal. Check it out, WagerTalk.com. All right, let's go to the best bets. We're going to go to Ralph first because he's got a game on Friday night. We actually talked about it already. Ralph, tell us who you're going with on Friday night.
Marco Carmine, I'm going to keep it easy. We talked about St. Louis and Milwaukee. We talked about Milwaukee perhaps starting to get a little pressure that this is now a put-up-or-shut-up game with a division foe. I like the way Flaherty's pitching. I like the way Guerra has allowed his opponents to score very few runs. Total 8.5. If it's 8, I still like it. There are some 8.5s out there as we do it. Jump on it. Best bet, St. Louis, Milwaukee, Friday, under 8.5.
All right, I'm going to go next, guys, because I am on Saturday with my play. And we talked about that Baltimore-Atlanta game, and I know Atlanta's been playing good this season, but I got to go with Bundy in this matchup. But I'm not going to go the full 5 inning or the full game. I'm going to go the first 5 because I just want to deal with Bundy. I don't like that Baltimore bullpen, guys. It usually is a dumpster fire, and that's why this team is 20 games under 500 already. Or no, are they 30 games under 500? Yeah, they're bad. It was a 21-51.
Yep.
But this is a situation where Bundy has been the bright light on this team, and we know what his stats are. We know how good he pitches in a day game. This is a Saturday afternoon game at 4:05, so we're getting that daytime start with Bundy. I'm going to go ahead and take him first 5 innings. Bundy, Baltimore, for Saturday for my best bet. And, well, we saved the best for last. We're going to bring in Carmine. Sunday, soccer. You've got one for us. We're going to take a look at 11 a.m. start. That's actually sleeping in for the World Cup for 11 a.m. start. Who do you got for us?
I'll be back home by then, so I can watch that game. But that's the Poland-Colombia game, which is a Group H game. Now, here's the thing about so far in this World Cup. Obviously, it's a World Cup in Europe. European teams have done fantastic. European teams so far in this tournament have gone 13 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses. Obviously, the 2 losses were Germany against Mexico and Poland against Senegal. We're going to go against Poland once again. Typically, and with World Cups, typically European teams do very well in any World Cup hosted in Europe. Only once in 1958, which was in Sweden, did Brazil win the World Cup, did a South American team or any other team other than a European team. That also happened to be when Brazil brought out a young 17-year-old player known as Pelé. So, that's the only team to win, only non-European team to win on European soil in the World Cup or a World Cup final. But this Poland team, they struggled against Senegal. One of the interesting things, before they did the draw for the World Cup, the Polish team played no friendlies. The reason for playing no friendlies or warm-ups before the draw was to keep their FIFA ranking so they could get into an easier group as a second seed. So they got into this group with Senegal and Japan, and seemingly they should have advanced out of this group, but I just can't see that happening. Colombia have a very good team. They lost that first game against Japan, which was a shocker, an upset. But there was like a third-minute red card and penalty, so obviously put them behind the 8 ball. I do think they get the win on Sunday.
Red card, just so we're talking and people aren't sure, it means a player is off the field for the rest of the game. You're playing one short.
Yeah, they played one short, so it was a foul in the box, which was deemed stopping a goal-scoring opportunity. Japan was given a penalty kick. They scored. They went up 1-0. Colombia still actually came back down a man, scored a goal, tied it up, but Japan got a late winner off a set piece and won that game. But Colombia are pretty much still in this, and a win on Sunday against Poland puts them right back in there with obviously a shot to advance with their final game, match day 3 against Senegal.
All right, good stuff. So recapping those, you've got St. Louis and Milwaukee under on Friday night from Ralph. You've got, from me, for Saturday, Baltimore with Bundy, first 5-inning wager. And then you've got Columbia on Sunday from Carmine. That's going to wrap up this week's show, guys. I want to thank Carmine for stopping in. You've been here, Vegas. This is, you came, little vacation time, play some poker, also to do work. You came in and did videos for us this week. You can check those videos out at WagerTalk, and we have a whole slew of videos that we did this week. Check out, we did 7 videos in the studio on various topics, including one with you, Carmine, on the World Cup. Also, check out Carmine's work. Follow him on Twitter at Carmine Bianco, WT, for WagerTalk. Happy early 50th birthday for you. And,
yes, it's coming.
You had the limoncello at the end of the dinner last night, which Carmine's the only guy that celebrates his 50th birthday by taking everybody out and buying them dinner. So, you got it backwards.
It's the Italian way.
It is. We did that, and good meal last night, good times this week. Also, thanks to Ralph Michaels being in studio. You can check out all of Ralph's work at WagerTalk. Behind the controls, Mark Seidel makes us all sound good. We've got Johnny Detroit in Detroit, gets all of this stuff up for us and out to all of our social media networks. You can also subscribe to the podcast at iTunes, and you can follow us on iHeartRadio. And got to thank you guys, our loyal listeners, tuning in each week. Without you guys, there would be no podcast. So we appreciate you taking the time to spend a little bit of your week with us. That's it for this week. I'll talk to you guys next week. I'm Marco D'Angelo. Till then, let's cash some tickets.